about the hollow state, is that the third party, meaning like say, how do I say, like let's say DSS is the department, right?
Yes.
And one of the, what do you call it, like mental health or something like that, is that for like a third party, they would consider the hollow state, or I'm reading it incorrectly?
Well, you're getting there, you're getting a good feel of it, all right? That's a good question. It's an excellent question. What is this photo? What is the photo of? Some people mentioned that it was a cool photo. Well, what is it?
Inside of a tree trunk.
Yeah.
It's inside of a tree trunk. You're right. From the outside, it's like a great, big, strong tree. All right? On the inside, it's hollow. Animals living there. All right? It's also a metaphor for this concept of the hollow state. Now, the reading is about the hollow state, and that's the title of the article. But the metaphor is getting at, you have this the state, which is the government. The trend is to quote-unquote hollow it out. But what does that mean, in a sense? It means the not just the disarticulation, but the disarticulating of the branches of government. In this lecture, what we're going to do is go over the trend and the mechanisms that have really transpired over the last 20 to 30 years that bring us to the point at which we're at. All right? And give you a better grasp of what this concept of the hollow state is. All right? Are there any questions? So to answer your question, the hollow state means that the state is hollowed out. Now we're going to spend this lecture breaking down what that actually means. All right? Governance. It's not government, but governance. It's the process by which society collectively addresses societal challenges to meet societal needs. It includes government. That's one part of it. That's a strong and major part of it. But it also includes civil society, nonprofits, businesses, citizens, and any other groups or individuals that have a stake in addressing societal issues, public issues. The main underlying point here in the difference between government and governance is that government, which you're all used to hearing, are the branches of government. Governance is about bringing all of the actors in society that have a stake in addressing an issue together to try and solve that issue. More multidimensional. There's more players involved. Government is basically upon hierarchy. Everyone in the government, all the way up to the top administrative civil service official, is responsible to someone, and they need to obey the commands of their superior based upon the bureaucratic structure. The difference between anyone involved in government is that directions are clear, hierarchy is clear. Governance, on the other hand, is based upon influence, based upon people willingly coming together for some reason or another to solve a societal challenge. The underlying theme of governance is that government cannot solve all society's challenges alone. There's not just limited resources, but limited skill and the ability for any one governmental agency to solve any of the major challenges that we have today. Terrorism. No one government can solve the problem. Environmental degradation. No one government can solve the problem. But once you start digging deeper, it's not just the government that's part of the issue. Businesses, nonprofits, environmental nonprofits play a large role, so forth and so on. But you can go through any major issue, even some issues where government has a handle on it. There's a major role for civil society, businesses, and so forth to play a role in addressing the challenge. Theoretically, and under the same theoretical structure that we covered last week with the reinventing government and the concept of steer, not row, the public policy making mechanisms that we have to decide what government should do and not do, for the most part, there's not a better answer. There are ways to strengthen the democratic process to bring more equality in society, socially, economically, so forth and so on. So more people are well informed and can contribute to the democratic process. That's a way to improve it. But as for a structure or process that's better, that allows different groups in society to use whatever means and resources they have and channel those through competing through the democratic process to figure out what our branches of government should do, it's very difficult to find a better system. Now, can we make it better? Yes. And there's room for debate there. But under this theory, it's not calling for a change in the way our government, our democratic process is structured. It's calling for a change in how administration is carried out. All right? Are there any questions on that? I know I may be a little loaded.
Yes.
Yes.
If I understand correctly, without the governance, the government can't, as you know, can't solve all the problems. But the government's influence on the government helps steer them in the direction to solve problems.
Well, it's more of government are the public agencies who are charged with solving societal issues, right? As society, we always look for government to lead us in addressing societal challenges. What has happened, or in public administration theory, what has started to become acknowledged is that government is not best at, how should I say it, so actually solving the challenges that are put at its doorstep. Or put it another way, government can do a lot of good in society, but there's also room for other players in the community and society to help address the challenges that we face. In any community, it's economic development issues. People need jobs. Right? It's education. In terms of education, the schools, they educate the children, right? But you tend to find a need in every community for after-school programs. Sometimes the school puts them on, sometimes they don't. That's why organizations like the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, Boys and Girl Scouts of America, there's a need for those types of services, right? But a lot of times they work in concert with the public agencies. Any more questions? Example, homelessness in New York City. Estimation a couple months ago, about 56,000 people sleep in New York City shelters every night. A lot of people, especially when it's really cold outside. This came out a couple months ago, maybe November. It's estimated that there are about 24,000 homeless children in New York City every day. 24,000 is a lot. It's the size of some cities. When we talk about governance, there are a lot of agencies that play a hand in trying to address this issue, because it's a serious issue. Department of Homeless Services, New York City Department of Homeless Services, New York City Department of Education, which has a specific department to address the challenges of homeless children. There are a whole host of nonprofit social service organizations that deal with this issue. Religious organizations. Can anyone think of any other groups?
ACS.
ACS, Child Services, excuse me,
The Department of Health.
Department of Health, all right? Children need immunizations, they need checkups. Who else?
Social services.
Social services, various kinds, right? There could be psychological issues. There could be employment services for the parent. There's also housing, all right? There's a whole host of agencies that can come into play, public agencies, but also nonprofit agencies, when dealing with a family that has children that's homeless. All right? And right now, we're still speaking macro. It's still in the abstract. But what I want you to start to see is that for any issue, major issue in society, there are multiple players involved, multiple agencies, and they're not all governmental. Many of times, they're nonprofit, social service, religious organizations, who play a major role in addressing societal challenges day in and day out. And without their support, we would have many more challenges that would be not rectified, I would say, in society. Because in a way, services that government provides, that social service agencies provide, nonprofit and religious services provide, when they're doing their best, many of times people outside of that profession don't even notice. When the system is failing, that's when people notice. That's the challenge, especially for the nonprofit world. Because you want people to know the good that you're doing, so you have to tell the story, get the story out there. And tell them, get the story out there of why it is important to serve the organization that provides the services. The story a couple months ago about the invisible children in New York. You want to?
Your piece of investigative journalism over a year in the making. A major piece of investigative journalism over a year in the making, played out on the front pages of the New York Times this week. The series, The Invisible Child, brought Dasani, a 12-year-old homeless girl on the streets of New York City, to life. Meet Dasani. This is Dasani, named after the bottled water because to her mother it signified luxury. She's a proud 4-foot 8-inch tall 12-year-old and one in an invisible army of children, 22,000 strong, who are homeless in New York City. And this is what passes for a home. A 520 square foot room shared with her parents and 7 siblings in a dilapidated city-run shelter.
I'm going to college.
School is where Dasani can find an escape, learning to recite poems from memory. Despite her tough circumstances, Dasani has boundless energy. She dreams big, but even her dreams are clouded by the despair that surrounds her.
In your imagination, what does the perfect childhood look like?
Quiet, flowers everywhere, sparkles on the ground. Mom and Dad always drunk though. A perfect childhood. Yeah, Mom and Dad can be drunk at a perfect childhood.
So do you think that being drunk is a part of the perfect childhood? The parents are drunk?
That's because when they're drunk, if you ask them anything, they tell you can get it. That's a perfect childhood.
Really, Dasani, you really think that perfect childhood is your
You
parents?
said it was my imagination.
Okay.
I used it.
The voice you heard on the tape with Dasani was Andrea Elliott, the New York Times reporter who spent 15 months chronicling this family's struggle. And Andrea joins us now. I have to say, an extraordinary piece of journalism, maybe the most remarkable thing I have read this year. Thank you for joining us. And Dasani, one of 22,000 homeless children in the city of New York, but a remarkable young girl.
She's a remarkable girl. I argue that her circumstances are less remarkable because of the sheer size of this population. But this kid is curious, funny, whip smart. Her resilience was something that I really was curious about myself. how strength played a role in getting her through her day-to-day life.
And growing up, I mean, she's 11 years old for most of the time I spent with her. And yet she's kind of a surrogate parent.
She is, very much so. And one of the things I think I came away with after spending more than a year with this family, was just seeing how the very qualities that potentially could help her escape her circumstances, her strength, her resilience, her intelligence, are also things that have become indispensable to carrying the family forward in a sense. She's relied upon to hold it together because this is a family that struggles with a lot of problems. And so it's a little bit the irony of her strengths in the way that they become a weakness.
And you talk about how that number caught your eye, 22,000 homeless children. This is, to put in context, it could not fit in Madison Square Garden.
Right.
And yet this is the invisible side of homelessness. We don't see these children as much.
It's true. I find it really striking how when I was with them, kind of just in their daily lives in New York City, how easily they remain on the margins and sort of in the shadows of city life. And part of that has to do with the fact that I think the experience of poverty in the United States is one that is more subtle than in other places I've covered. And so in New York City, a lot of the garments, for instance, the clothing garments that are donated, that find their way to this family, come from households of means. So the children will be wearing used Uggs and Patagonia fleeces, and you just don't, poverty doesn't wear itself in such an obvious way. And yet, what I think that the family would say about that is that it makes it no more superior than poverty in other countries when you consider the incredible gap between what these children have and what they need in order to thrive. This child, Dasani, and her siblings, is really gifted. She's an amazing athlete, she's a great dancer, she's really, really smart. Had she been born into other circumstances, she would be thriving, but in her life as it is, she's merely surviving.
And describe the conditions, because you saw something no one else ever get a chance to see, because frankly we're not allowed inside. Describe the circumstances inside a family homeless shelter. This is some 300 people living in this shelter.
So this is a shelter that is run by the city, and most shelters in New York City are actually run by nonprofits. There's a range of experiences, but this shelter is definitely one that struggles with a lot of terrible conditions in the sense that there's mold on the walls, mice in their room. They were laying out traps every night and shooting video of the mice that they would catch. They had to hang their food from a plastic bag from the ceiling. The food was served rancid a lot of the time. Two of the children are asthmatic, one is legally blind, and they shared this small space with 10 people basically doubled up on mattresses in one small space for years. And I think that kind of compressed experience of living would make any family fall apart. And
I mean, it's incredible. The photographs are, really bring it to life. But you're a mom. You've got two young children. This is not like any really other story, right? This had to affect you, especially a year, 15 months.
It very much opened my eyes, as also a New Yorker, to a different experience of the city. And this is kind of what I came away with again and again, was just the sense that while New York is very much a place defined by what's out of reach, I mean, it's impossible. Most people feel that there's something out of reach when they're living in New York, an apartment they can't get or a job. But this is a population for whom everything is out of reach. And I think that is what struck me the most, being with these children day in, day out, and just thinking about how that experience is replicated tens of thousands of times in this homeless population, but also by millions across the country. The sense that this is a country that's filled with promise that isn't for them, that isn't something that's attainable by them.
And just almost out of time, but I can't imagine you're going to leave this story behind. I mean, I can tell from watching the tape, you've almost become a mentor work to Dasani? You're only chronicling her life, but you become close to this girl and her family.
I remain a journalist. My role is as a journalist. When you're reporting on children, it's a very different thing. You really do have to connect with them and talk about their feelings and their experiences in a way that draws them out. And she's a very vocal child. I hope to continue to follow them, yes.
All right, Andrea Elliott, again, an extraordinary piece of journalism and a really important one. Thank you for taking the time to share it with us.
Thank you.
It's a powerful story. Huh? I mean, you look at it from different angles. She's 12 years old. Most of the story was captured when she was 11. It's middle school. Chances of high school. How'd she get through? You have a hand up?
I just wanted to comment on it. So the journalist stayed with them for a year, and the story is now exposed,
Yes.
right? But it was never hidden. So her point is, what?
Well,
I mean, people are homeless throughout the country for years, decades. Now that this story is out, does it make a difference?
well, it only makes a difference if more people do something about it, you know. News in general, there are stories going on every day. There are things going on, millions of things going on every day. When something becomes news, when someone takes it and turns it into a story, creates more content, journalistic content, all right? And people, when there's an outlet and they see it and they read it, some people may take heart to it and may say, I want to do something about this. Or some people keep reading through the paper.
So what happened?
Excuse me?
How long was this story?
How old?
When was it exposed? When did we?
Not too long ago. Let's see what the date is on this.
Stop.
This is December 13. 14 now. 13 December 2013. And last year they said 2,200 homeless children in the video. Last year's numbers were 23,979. So it's fluctuating a little bit, but it's pretty stable, all right? But what you can do is you start to see, this is a story about one individual, right? You say, what does it matter? It matters to her, right? These almost 24,000 children. But the bigger thing here is, if something is defined as a problem, how do you solve it? Is it a problem? I mean, as a society, do we think that it's okay for children to be homeless? In some places it is. All right? Public policy dictates somewhere in our society that some systems should be put into place to help those who aren't in the position to help themselves. So it is a public policy issue. There's administrative agencies whose job it is to try to address the situation. Now, they live in an apartment that was provided, what they say, by homeless services.
That's like a what, temporary shelter? Yeah, like a shelter back in.
Temporary/permanent. Yes.
The issue I have with the video, I dealt with a family with some situations like that in ACS.
Yes.
And the VHS did like a clean, I guess they went to clean house last year, because that infant that was in the shelter, that was rat poison and died. See, I feel like they wait until something drastic happens before they start making changes, and that's the issue that I have. You know, the family that I dealt with that was living in the shelter, it was a VHS shelter. The mother had an infant baby that was like 2 weeks old. There was like rat droppings in the crib and everything. And every time I went to the shelter, I went every week to make sure they were patching the holes up, fixing, and they couldn't move because they was going to go. She had 2 other children that were 2 and 3 and a 2-week-old baby. So I feel like they wait until something drastic happens for them to make changes, and that's a big issue. The way they were living with those mattresses mashed up like that, that's not how they're supposed to live. DHS is supposed to make sure that they have at least mattresses that are not broken open for the children to sleep on. So I think that video being exposed, I don't know how much change it made or how much change it will make, but I feel like they wait until something drastically happens when somebody's children die or something until they make us, until that makes a statement. They wait to drastic measures for them to make changes.
It's real. You've seen it in real life, right? As a case manager. It's not pretty. It challenges your moral compass as an individual, but also as an administrator. The reason why you assume that position and work for that agency is to deal with the problem. Yet you go and see the problem firsthand, and you can't do anything about it. That's sad irony. But it also exposes the limits governmental agent power. Once you see that and you understand that there are limits to governmental agent power, and you see really the critical need that people are in, at some point, people say, there's got to be something better. There is something better. What else can we do? What else can be done? And what it does is draw other people in. Because a lot of times when you see something like this, maybe one time you can turn your head and keep going. Sometimes when it's replicated over and over and over, you realize that it's a serious societal problem. And individuals don't have to work for the government to feel that way. People in business, people in religious organizations, people that want to volunteer their extra time. All right? Now we're starting to see why there is a need for this concept of governance. Because there is limits to what government can do. Sometimes they're wrapped up in bureaucratic red tape. I hate to say it.
And why is that? I'm ready to say red tape.
Because there's rules, regulations, policies, and procedures that circumvent every single action that an agent can take or do. Everything that an administrator deals with is a case. Either A, they meet the qualifications, or B, they do not meet the qualifications. And A, they meet the qualifications, you can take it to another step, right? And you go through the case process. But sometimes, in some cases, don't meet certain requirements, and maybe there is a challenge. Sometimes something cannot be done by that agent. But if someone had resources, someone knew another way, another agency may have a place for these people to stay. Maybe a better school program that can deal with the holistic challenges that this child has. Now, on one hand, the traditional administrative method of carrying out their work is say, okay, the rules and regulations allow me to do this. But now you have this concept of the disarticulated state, and this concept of governance means that in terms of government, everything's hierarchical based upon Weberian bureaucracy. But this concept of governance, it also talks about there being horizontal relationships. Horizontal relationships are built upon mutual interest, of solving a challenge in an area, solving some sort of challenge. So instead of the administrator seeing something and for some reason they cannot do something about, maybe they can pick up the phone and contact someone who just may be able to do something about it. It's not an administrator. Maybe a nonprofit agency of some sort. But in order to even get to that point, government still has the pulse of society, what's going on in the community. But instead of being in the position of saying, okay, either we can solve it directly or we cannot solve it directly, government is in a unique position to say, okay, in this community, in society, we have a challenge. Who all in this community can help us solve this challenge? Setting some sort of meeting where different actors can come together, talk about an issue, try to see who can do what, articulate what are the services that are provided to address this one issue in our society. You can start to understand the capacity, not just what government provides, but what the entire nonprofit, social service, religious community, business community, in that community, what their capacity is. That's taking it another step further, 2 steps further. In the traditional Weberian bureaucracy, right? But it also takes a different type of administrator, right?